If you have a boxing anime or manga you enjoy that I didn't mention in today's video, let me know down in the comments. So we have super Chad badass boxers in some martial arts manga and super simps in others. But what about anime and manga based fully around boxing? So we all know of the two big classics of Hajime no Ippo that has a few anime pretty much series from the early 2000s onward, and a manga that's still ongoing to this day with a total of 1,309 chapters at the recording of this video. You know, that's like 400 more chapters than One Piece, or 300 more chapters than One Piece. That's just insane to think about. And then the other, you know, classic boxing anime and manga, Ashita no Joe, or Joe's Tomorrow, however you want to call it, having finished the manga with a total of 111 chapters, and then a few anime seasons from the 1970s onwards. As you know, 1970s, you can really see the dated elements in it if you haven't seen it or heard of it before. But those two are really considered the two major classics. But not just those two, I'm aware that there's hundreds of boxing manga that are even older than those two, but those are the two most popular older ones in my opinion. Also, many of you would have heard of Megalobox with its 13 episode anime season that also has an upcoming season 2 in 2021, so stay hyped for that. The basis of that is featuring mechanical limbs known as gear to enhance the speed and power of its users, with there being a typical underdog story but executed with pretty much the emphasis on the main character going up against people with only rigged fights, or mostly going against people with the fight being rigged for a living, so having always a disadvantage in each and all fights, which is a cool aspect. But what about Levius and the manhwa known as the Boxer, the focus of today's video? So for Levius, the appeal and aesthetic of the series is very akin to Megalobox, with the steampunk elements and the mechanical boxing element. The basis of it is in the 19th century empire after a big war known as Rose that pretty much changed the world as they knew it. Mechanical boxing ended up becoming the most popular sport or pretty much event around the destroyed land, which involved people who had their bodies modified. Some people lost like limbs in the war or during the war, or some just had their limbs removed to enhance their power in the mechanical boxing sport. Under his uncle's teaching, Levius, a lonely boy who lost his father in the war and whose mother's in a pretty much coma, enters the mechanical boxing scene. There's 18 chapters that make up 3 volumes for the manga that is concluded, and there's also a sequel manga or sequel series known as Levius EST, which is still ongoing to this day, but it doesn't have very many chapters at the recording of this video. And then it also has an anime that recently came out on Netflix about a couple months ago, I would say. I watched it about 2 months ago, but it's a little bit older when it was first released. That has a total of 12 episodes that pretty much covers the majority of the first season of the 18 chapters, or the 3 volumes of the first part of it. So the mechanical boxing element is a strong suit, and the main appeal of it is mostly the characters. There's not very many characters, or not very many main characters we see, but we get to see development for all of them, and all of them pretty much get their own time to shine. 12 episodes is not a long time to, you know, get everyone to develop, but each character gets their own chance to shine, gets their own appeal about them, and then with the main character overcoming each challenge he gets to. There's no real underdog, like strong underdog vibe to it that typical boxing anime seem to have. He isn't like at the top when the story starts, he's at the bottom, but it doesn't really give off the appeal of an underdog story. It's more Levius, the main character, slowly each fight revealing more and more of his power until he can really show the world what he's truly capable of. And apart from the boxing element, there is a big underlying plot, which is another cool element of it, and I really enjoyed the OSTs throughout the anime as well. And the art for the manga, it does have some great panels as well. I have to give props to that as well. And then my personal favorite, which goes to the manhwa, The Boxer, a Korean webcomic slash manhwa, whatever you want to call it, that has around 16 English translated chapters at the recording of this video, and around 39 chapters in the raw. So if, you know, a translation team wants to come in and, you know, translate the rest of those, go ahead. But I have checked out most of the stuff in the raw, even though I don't really understand what's going on. As a webcomic, it's in full color, so it's not your typical manhwa, not your typical manga manga aesthetic. It's a manhwa, a Korean manhwa in color like always. I mentioned it in my martial arts manhwa to check out. If you haven't checked that video, make sure to check it out there. But I wanted to touch on it again and talk about it again because it's my personal favorite boxing series that I've pretty much seen, read, watched so far, and it's just great. And I just, more people need to be checking this greatness out. So the base of the boxer, the story is the boxer, so it's going to be about boxing. It kind of chains around 8 chapters in, so I'll just talk about them in separate parts. So the first half is pretty much 3 main characters, with art being okay, and it's really good and strong at showing the impact of the punches and the speed of the characters moving. It's new and not that long, so it's easy to get into. Some chapters for manhwa, for example the God of High School, are like long as fuck, but the chapters for this aren't too long. They're longer than the typical manga chapters, but I find the size of each chapter very good. The start of it is high school based, with an old man or old assumed legend, we don't really know, but an assumed old legend who is looking for someone to train. And from what I know, it's weekly chapters on the app known as Webtoon, but it could have changed since last time I talked about it. It's highly rated so far, so it's getting a lot of popularity on the app Webtoon, which is cool to see. But so far the main appeal has been the main character and pretty much the story so far. So as I mentioned, 3 main characters, and the 3 main characters are summed up in this way: the idea of worthlessness, no skill, with extreme drive and want to improve. That's one character. The second one is a genius with immense skill and drive, but doesn't, have the same appeal to the people somewhat, and is pretty much an asshole that, abuses his power. And then the last one, who pretty much becomes the main character of the whole story, and who is the main character and my personal favorite character, a monster with no drive. So we got a person with no skill but insane drive, a genius with drive but doesn't really appeal to other people, then an absolute monster with no drive. So that's just the main appeal and greatness of the story. The monster, or the main character's no drive, is an absolute chad. And it's also good to know there is psychological elements throughout the story as well. The story isn't too deep and complex, with it being focused on the boxing element, but with the main character being so unique and interesting, I assume it's going to pick up a lot more as it goes. So in summary of today's video, if you haven't seen any of these boxing anime or manga, I highly recommend checking out the Boxers manhwa. Probably number 1 in my opinion to check out that. If you're not really into this type of anime or manga aesthetic, I highly recommend reading the first 8 chapters and see if you get into it from there. I highly think you will. So if you're going to take one thing away from this video, read The Boxer. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your favorite boxer in any of these anime and manga, and maybe your favorite series as well. And that's it, guys. Peace.